Welcome back, grade 12s, to this explainer on Chapter 11. Today, we're stripping away all the fluff and mastering the absolute vital signs of the economy to maximize your exam points. Think of economic and social indicators like the diagnostic tools a doctor uses to check a patient's health. In this session, that patient is the South African economy. We're going to decode these indicators together so you can walk into that exam room completely confident.
Okay, here's our game plan for today. First, assessing the economy. Then, key economic indicators, followed by a breakdown of inflation, specifically CPI versus PPI. After that, we'll look at essential social indicators, and finally, we're going to master those tricky GDP exam calculations. Let's get into it.
Part 1. Assessing the economy. Why do we even bother measuring this stuff in the first place?
So, when you're assessing the economy, there are 4 key considerations you really need to jot down. First up is performance. This is all about establishing the current state of the economy using specific stats. Though keep in mind, metrics like GDP do have limitations, right? They don't capture everything, like the informal economy or income inequality. Second, we have comparisons. This allows us to track changes over time. Is the economy actually growing or are we slowing down? Third, specifications. For these numbers to be meaningful at all, they literally have to be compiled following strict, standardized rules. And lastly, purposes. Every single indicator is compiled for a very specific reason. For example, the Consumer Price Index, or CPI, is calculated for the exact purpose of reflecting changes in our cost of living.
Moving right along to Section 2, Key Economic Indicators. These are your bread and butter definitions for the exam.
When, not if, but when, they ask you to define an economic indicator in Section A, this is exactly the phrasing you want to use. Don't overcomplicate it. It's simply a statistic that shows the behavior of a specific variable, which then helps us establish the current state of the entire economy. That's it.
Now, for the economically active population, or EAP, the absolute biggest trap here is forgetting the age bracket. EAP strictly refers to people between the ages of 15 and 65. If you just write down people who work, you are absolutely going to lose the mark. The EAP includes all persons, regardless of sex, who are actively supplying labor for productive activities within that specific age range. Remember, the EAP is the baseline we use to calculate the official unemployment rate. Basically, those in this 15 to 65 group who actively want to work but just can't find a job.
Okay, terms of trade. This is literally just a ratio comparing a country's export prices with its import prices. Now, if this ratio gets worse, meaning our import prices are rising way faster than our export prices, it means a greater volume of our exports has to be produced just to pay for the exact same amount of imports, and that can really negatively spill over into the balance of payments. For instance, if the price of the platinum we export drops, but the price of the oil we import goes up, well, our terms of trade worsen.
Section 3. Let's talk inflation. Specifically, how price changes impact GDP, and the difference between CPI and PPI.
Think of nominal GDP like a giant balloon. It gets inflated by rising prices, which makes the economy look way bigger than it actually is. Real GDP, on the other hand, acts like a magnifying glass that strips away all that inflation, showing us the true physical growth. You see, nominal GDP looks at the value of production using the prices of that exact time frame, also known as current prices. But because prices naturally rise over time thanks to inflation, nominal GDP can make it look like our economy is booming when actually just the prices are going up. That's exactly why we rely on real GDP, or constant prices. By pulling out the effect of inflation, we get a much more accurate picture of actual economic activity.
If your exam asks you to distinguish between CPI and PPI in tabular form, recreating this exact layout is a guaranteed point winner. Let's break down the key differences. CPI measures the cost of living for consumers, while PPI measures the cost of production for producers. The CPI basket includes both goods and services, but PPI is strictly goods only. Also notice how PPI includes capital and intermediate goods, which are totally excluded from CPI. And finally, because consumers pay taxes, CPI includes VAT and interest rates, whereas PPI excludes them. Master these differences and you're golden.
You'll also need to know headline inflation. Note that this is different from core inflation. Core inflation excludes highly volatile items, things like fresh meat, veggies, and changes in VAT or mortgage interest rates, which are affected by government policy. Headline inflation is the unadjusted figure, and the CPI we derive it from is the official index used by the Reserve Bank for inflation targeting. They aim to keep it strictly between 3% and 6%. A quick tip for Section B of your exam: if you see CPI breaching that 6% target, be ready to explain how the Reserve Bank might raise interest rates to cool things down.
All right, Section 4, we're switching gears from economic production over to the human element, essential social indicators.
Check out this massive number, 46.8 million. That was South Africa's population back in 2005. You might be wondering, why do we care about a demographic stat in an economics exam? Well, because the size and growth of a population heavily dictates the tax base, meaning the actual number of people paying taxes, and it directly determines the massive scale of social services and infrastructure that the government has to deliver.
Now, this next number is a pretty stark, shocking anchor point for your memory: 47 years. Our life expectancy rate actually plummeted from 62.8 years down to just 47 years, according to the source data in your curriculum. Why? This reflects the devastating impact of the historic HIV/AIDS pandemic. It goes to show exactly why healthcare data is absolutely vital for assessing a nation's human capital.
So beyond just demographics, standard of living comes down to these critical health, education, and housing metrics. Under health, we look at infant mortality, the number of kids who pass away before age 5, plus access to safe drinking water and proper sanitation. Together with education and income metrics, these are combined globally to calculate the HDI, or Human Development Index, which gives us a single score for our country's overall human well-being. For education, we measure the percentage of the national budget actually dedicated to public schooling. And under housing and urbanization, we're tracking government housing subsidies and the really rapid migration of people moving into established urban centers.
Grab your pens, write this one down: the Gini coefficient. It highlights unbalanced distribution, which usually happens when a progressive income tax system isn't being used effectively. It's a really crucial social indicator that tells us the gap between the richest and the poorest in a country. A score of 0 is perfect equality, and a score of 1 is perfect inequality. And definitely note this for your exams: South Africa consistently has one of the highest Gini coefficients in the world, showing far more severe inequality than our fellow BRICS nations.
Finally, we made it to Section 5, Mastering GDP Exam Calculations. Let's tackle that national account math.
Converting domestic figures to national figures is honestly just a matter of adding foreign income coming in and subtracting foreign income going out. Domestic means everything produced within our borders. National means the total income earned by our permanent residents, regardless of where they are in the world. So you take the GDP, add the factor income South Africans earn from the rest of the world, and then subtract the factor income foreigners earn inside South Africa. The result? Your gross national income. Easy, right?
You'll definitely want to pause and take a screenshot of this. Memorize these exact conversion steps for basic prices and factor cost, because you will for sure be asked to calculate this in your exam booklets. Remember the golden rule of conversions. You do the inverse. Market prices are what consumers pay. They include taxes and they lower prices through subsidies. To strip that back to the initial basic prices, you have to add subsidies on products back in and subtract the taxes on products out. To go even further back to the raw factor cost, the actual baseline cost of rent, wages, and profit, you add other subsidies on production and subtract other taxes on production. Practice this sequence over and over until it is second nature.
Before we wrap up, here's a massive Section C essay structure tip for you. Always define your economic and social indicators in your intro, use real South African examples like our incredibly high Gini coefficient in the body, and conclude with an evaluation of our overall performance. We've given you the tools to ace your exam today, but the real question is, if economic indicators are the vital signs of a nation's health, what do South Africa's current numbers reveal about the actual challenges and opportunities waiting for your generation to solve? Keep these frameworks in mind, practice those calculations, and you will absolutely crush your economics paper. Good luck with your studies and keep questioning the data.